Bible, Daniel.
Okay, we left off with verse 36 of chapter 11. I just want to look at that a little more extensively here. It says, "Then the king," this one that we often would call the Antichrist in the New Testament, "will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god." And we see that Paul talks about that in 2 Thessalonians again. "And magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things." In my footnote for monstrous, what does it say? Extraordinary. He just, it says, monstrous things or extraordinary things against the God of gods. "And he will prosper until the indignation is finished, for that which is decreed will be done." So here he's actually given a time by God to look like he's prospering and gaining strength and gaining power, and while he's actually speaking against God. So you need to know, I mean, this is going to be important, that we need to know that this is coming. It's ordained by God. God knows it's coming. He's actually letting it happen, that there's one that will arise with great power and begin to speak things against even him and look like he's prospering, look like he's succeeding. You need to be settled in your heart as to who you believe and how you believe him, and know that the God that we worship out of the Bible is the one true God. He's the God of gods. And he said there's going to be a guy that arises and begins to even speak against him. And it says in verse 37, a curious verse here, "He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers." So he's not going to be relating to Yahweh for Israel. He won't be relating to Allah for the Muslims. He won't be relating to any gods of the past. He's kind of sets himself up, it seems like here, as a god himself. And he says, no regard for the gods of his fathers or for the desire of women. And that's a curious statement there. Some people thought, well, does this mean that he's a homosexual? And I guess it could. But in the Jewish history, the desire of women was a term that was used in regards to the coming of the Messiah. The desire of women would be the woman that would give birth to the Messiah. And so this might be relating to, he'd give no regard to the desire of women, meaning give no regard to the Messiah that would come. I don't know. There's a question about what this could mean. It could mean a lot of different things, I guess. But it seems like in this, it would definitely be he's not giving regard to the Messiah because he's speaking against the God of gods. But it might also mean something more nefarious there, I guess, maybe. It says, "Nor will he show regard for any other god, for he will magnify himself above them all." So verse 37, we see that expanded upon in the New Testament. Hopefully we'll get to that in not too distant future. But Paul talks about that in 2 Thessalonians. It says, "But instead he will honor a God of fortresses." So it's talking about power and strength and you know, actually the God that we worship is the mantle of authority seems to be in the kingdom of God, a mantle of humility. It says the meek shall inherit the earth. We see in the New Testament the humble shall inherit the earth. It says a God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures. He will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and he will cause them to rule over the many, and will parcel out land for a price. So if you fall under his authority, if you give in to him, he's going to show you a lot of favor. You know, it's like there's a ruling class and a ruled class, but if your ideas lined up with the ruling class, in this case, this one guy who's really crying out against all other gods, if you line up with him, he's going to have the power to give you rulership over people and also to give you some land. But you got to know this is a short-term deal. This isn't going to last very long, and it's spelled out for us here as we go through the book of Daniel. We've already seen a little bit about that, but it's going to give us some time sequences here as to how short this really is. In verse 45, it actually talks about where this guy will set up camp at one point. It says, "And he will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to his end and no one will help him." So there is going to come a destruction of him, and no one's going to care to help him at that point. And we saw earlier that it'll come not at the hands of men, it's going to be something that God does. And so we see here that it looks like he's going to be set up in the middle, possibly in the middle of the land of Israel there, between the mountains and the sea, the beautiful holy mountain and the seas. It says, so then we move into chapter 12, last chapter of Daniel. I'm probably going to read the whole chapter here and comment it as we go along, but just starting with verse 1, here we see this figure again come into play. This is really we get our information about Michael from the book of Daniel. It says, now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people. So he's talking to Daniel. Who are his people? His people are the Jews. It says, who stands guard over the sons of your people, he'll arise. And there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. So here he's talking about this time that will come. It's throughout the scriptures. It's a horrendous thing to think about. There have been such horrendous times and many against the Jewish people in the past. But here's another time which we find, I think, is in Jeremiah chapter 30. It's a chapter that we usually refer to the explanation of Jacob's trouble. A time coming when Israel go through the time of trouble is be so bad it looks like the men are in agony giving birth. He says in that it's like there's such agony, they're bent over and groaning like they're giving birth because it's such a time of distress. We see that same kind of time of distress in Zechariah 14, where it shows all the nations of the earth are gathered against Israel, and half of the city has been ravaged, and people have been taken captive, and all of this stuff has happened. And yet, at that time, it says that the Lord himself will set his foot on the Mount of Olives, which we'll get to Zechariah in just a few sessions from now. But here it's talking about all these people, all this distress will come upon the people. And it says, everyone who is found written in the book will be rescued. Written in the book. Here's, we see some things in the New Testament about written in the book of life. And your name, Jesus talked about it's so important that your name be written in the book. Well, here's that introduction to that reference of the book that your name needs to be written in. And in verse 2 it says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. So here we see the first picture really laid out for us of the resurrection and the judgment at the resurrection. That he says, many will be raised, these, the righteous ones, the ones that are found written in the book, they'll be raised to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. I think I got a little footnote. It says abhorrence, everlasting abhorrence. So there's an eternal judgment upon the wicked, eternal life, and is given to those that have followed the Lord, who've been faithful to him. So it goes on in this chapter 12, and those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So there's a great reward that even during this time, and I think that's one reason why we really want to understand the book of Daniel. We really want to understand the details that are given here, and it's going to take some work to look at it, but I think the book is being opened and will be being opened more and more as we get to the end of the age, that the things that were sealed up by Daniel begin to be revealed. And he says, those who have insight and will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be one of those that really has insight as to what's going on at the end of the age? And it says, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And I think if you really have that understanding at the end of the age, you can begin to explain to everybody else and bring comfort and bring understanding, show them there's a future and a hope, show them that this is a temporary time, encourage them to endure to the end. Those who endure to the end will be saved. And if you can really encourage them, then it says I think you'll be the one leading many to righteousness, and you'll get a reward. It says you'll be like the stars forever and ever. You'll be a bright shining star. It says in verse 4, but as for you, Daniel, conceal these words, seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase. And so, he's telling him here, he says, you know what? Seal this up for now. It's not going to happen in Daniel's time. When we're looking back those many years ago, it's not happening then. Seal up this. This is for the end time. A lot of things are going to happen. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase. There's a lot of speculation as to the details of what that means. But anyway, we can see one thing. Daniel, seal it up for now. We're going to find out later what this is all about.